Good morning, I'm Timothy Halloran, and today we're going to be discussing what we actually understand versus what we think we understand versus the actual wisdom of concrete understanding that we actually inherently possess. So the purpose of these videos is we're going to be having discussions and discussing subject matters that actually go outside and beyond astrology, and yet what we're talking about is very relevant to what's going on at this particular time into future periods of time. And so if we want to understand the more technical bits and pieces of that and the processes that we're actually going through, you can tune into the astrology report that will be next week. However, these discussions are going to be more so liberated from the lingo and the language of astrology, so that way we can start talking about broad subject matters that can lead into subject matters, and this can be much more so of an exploration that we're doing together. So although we're discussing truth, we're discussing understanding and wisdom today. First of all, I need to introduce the reality that I in no way intend to impress upon you my understanding of the truth, my beliefs, my assumptions, etc. Rather, what the purpose of this video is to make us aware internally, for us to figure out how to discern our own understanding and to discern whether our own understanding is belief, is knowledge, is speculation, or is it an actual wisdom, an actual understanding? As we live in a world where there are so many shades of gray, and it's really not black and white, and it's really not so simple, and so we have these concepts and ideas of what the truth is. And of course, in the definition of what the truth is, we know that the truth is that which does not change. The truth is the permanent, all-containing, all-in-all. This is what we call absolute truth. And yet there is a spectrum of truth. There is also relative truths that are impermanent, that are changing, that are fluctuating. And yet we can also say that these things are true. So for example, it is true that I am an American, but this is a relative truth because my life is not eternal on this planet. I will be an American until a certain amount of time. Another way that we might look at relative truth is when we look back in history and we understand that, just several hundreds years ago, the consensus, all-pervasive understanding that we as a collective species all accepted and believed was that the world was flat. And we have seen now that that was a relative truth. That might have been truth at the time because we all agreed at the moment that the world appears very flat and that we can see the horizon as a straight line and that we can seem to, move around in very linear-like directions. So it was assumed that the earth is flat. And now that we've gathered some more observation by lifting these satellites into outer space and running these various experiments that prove that lo and behold, when we actually observe, and when we study, and when we repeatedly test and experiment what we already know, that's how we head towards understanding. And I think that this is the main point that is so vitally important for us all, is the best gift that I could give to anybody at this particular time is the understanding that we are in the service of our own wisdom and truth when we are the most willing and ready to throw everything that we've understood in the past into the fire of transformation and evolution moving forward. This means that when we are happy with what we know, and we assume that we know it all perfectly, and that we're the wise one, we're entitled, we're qualified. Well, these are oftentimes the people, the moments, that cause us to be most rigid, catatonic, and not actually possessing an absolute truth, but rather grabbing onto a relative truth and then just being stubbornly persistent that this is the all in all. And so, when we start talking about what is the truth, what is actually going for us and always going to be going for us, we need to make sure that we are absolutely testing and discerning and trying our best to be our own devil's advocate as to what is true versus what is simply a belief, what is simply an assumption, or what might be some mundane knowledge that we acquired from some book or some teacher. And so we need to really know how to discern these different levels of understanding. When we believed that the world was flat, this was not actual wisdom, was it? This was us collectively being in the possession of a consensus belief. Each one of us believes and assumes that this is reality. Therefore, we live in that reality for a certain amount of time until something happens to blow that reality out of the water. And if we know anything about history, the people who were blowing that reality out of the water were severely prejudiced, because the people that are so content in assuming that they know everything, the all in the all, were so stubborn and so resistant to change that they persecuted and prejudiced the people that were actually trying to discern the truth. Now, we said that this is relevant for the times. How might we think this is still relevant to the times? How might we consider that there is still prejudice against those who are trying to upset the current consensus belief systems that are actually just assumptions of what we know, that are like grabbing onto relative, impermanent, not really true truths? And because we're so rigid, we're so stubborn, we're so resistant to change and transformation, we're so comfortable in what we assume that we know, that we imprison ourselves there, to the point where we become so fearful of change that we have to persecute and prejudice other people. Well, it's very important to understand real wisdom versus these types of assumptions, which can really land us into trouble, which can really imprison us and therefore entrap us in our own delusions, in which case our core beliefs actually limit our capacity to do something better. Our core beliefs limit our potential to find solutions that deeper and more reverently respect true nature. Oh, we respect true nature. We know everything in this day and time. No, we have to understand that if we're going to be heading in the direction of wisdom, we need to know that we don't know the best for ourselves yet. This is a noble endeavor for us to always be yearning for a deeper understanding of reality, of nature, of truth, of God, whatever you want to call it. The whole point is, what is the real wisdom of this nature, of this God, of this truth, versus the assumptions? Well, when we read a book and we get some knowledge, and this can happen in so many different ways. We used to open books and say, the world is flat. Oh, okay, I opened up the book and the book tells me that the world is flat. And this is coming from someone who believes themselves to be in a place of authority and qualification. These are key words. Authority. Oh yes, I am in the authority to write the book and publish the book that says that the earth is flat. And all those people who will read my book should know that because of my authority, they should listen to me. Think about this critically. How often we read books and assume that the author of these books has the qualification and authority to tell us how it is, to the point that we simply accept it because of their qualifications, their authority. Oh, they have a PhD. Oh, they've been studying for so long. Oh, they have a tangible experience. They had a first-hand experience of the truth. Then they wrote the book. The point is, when we read the book, we do not have the first-hand tangible experience. We are on some level or another trusting the words, the phrases, the teachings of somebody else, but we do not concretely understand it yet, until or unless we have moved on to a higher level of wisdom, in which case you read what is written in the book. The earth is flat. and it proves to you constantly that this is your state of existence. Now, the Earth of Flat example is a really telling example then, isn't it? Because all of our senses and our observations for a very long time was telling us that the Earth was flat. Until some pioneers came to this planet and started to have some observations, some experiments, and some tests which revealed the fact that maybe this assumption and maybe our observations of the past could have been misled. Well, to actually understand the wisdom and the truth, it has to constantly reaffirm itself to us always. In order for us to do that, we need to keep in our possession a level of dissatisfaction for what we do not concretely know. We don't pick up the book and then gain the instantaneous wisdom unless it's already in your possession. If the wisdom of the truth is already in your possession, you read the book and the Earth is round. Oh, well, I'm an astronaut and I've been in outer space and I've took my spaceship around the Earth. Therefore, I have the concrete wisdom that the Earth is round. And now I open the book and it says the Earth is round, and that resonates. It causes a trigger to go off in me that says, yeah, I've experienced that truth. This makes sense to me. Therefore, I can accept it. I can apply it to my life and it will help me out. I'm not going to worry about falling off the edge of the earth because I'm not afraid of such things. I've already gone beyond the fears of such things that actually come out of a lack of exploration. So many people were afraid of the edge of the earth for a very long time. And so they were afraid to travel to different countries because there was the assumption that if you went too far towards the ocean, you were going to fall off the frickin' planet. That type of consensus belief kept us as a collective imprisoned on our own nation and being separate from other countries and other nations for so long, because we didn't even believe it was possible for a country to exist on the other side of the planet. Similarly, isn't it necessary for us to look at the world as it is right now and look at how much we aren't exactly helping ourselves out with how we go along with the flow of nature, with how we exist harmoniously with what is. Yes, we can say that certain things are. The earth is. We all have this experience of the earth. You can go up to any person on the planet, say, do you have the experience of the earth beneath your feet? We will all agree on this experience. So we can get to this level of wisdom of the earth. Therefore, we can start working with the earth, vehicles, blah, blah, blah. This is how life works. We have to actually understand what we are working with. Therefore, it is critically important for us to know that the best service we can ever do to the truth, to nature, to God, is to be dissatisfied with what we already assume and what we already know, and be ready to sacrifice this, to surrender this all into the missing links, the information that has not come yet, that when this missing links and information comes, it can change everything from the ground up. Therefore, wouldn't it be nice for us to be able to discern what within ourselves is most likely to be challenged and transformed through the upcoming ages and the upcoming transformation and evolution that's always ongoing? And what parts of ourselves can we actually trust that this is actually secure, that this is a law of nature that is seen everywhere? And this is true wisdom. True wisdom is when you see it everywhere. So now we can use the example of God. What might knowledge of God be? Well, knowledge of God could be, I've read a book that says, in the beginning there was God and everything came from God. And then we look at the scientist, and the scientist says, in the beginning there was nothingness, and then there was this, antimatter, matter, and then there was a big bang. Everything came out of one source. So we all kind of agree at this point in time upon this basic level of knowledge that all comes from God, that all comes from the same source. And yes, it is freaking amazing that we have so much disagreement between religion and science right now, which should be revealing the reality that we don't actually know wisdom. We don't actually know the truth. There's so much disagreement here, and we're not agreeing on what we can hopefully get to in the future in terms of understanding what is unchanging. Well, when we have knowledge of God, it means everything comes from one thing. If we have wisdom of God, we see everywhere that fact, that reality, that truth. We see everywhere that everything comes from God, and God is the source, and that is a permanent, ever-existing truth, is when we have the real wisdom of God. Now, it's very important for us to discern. Do we have knowledge of God? Do we have belief of God? Or do we have wisdom of God? Because there are so many fanatical people out there that think they have really high-level bits and pieces of wisdom, that are in fact delusional people, that are misleading others. And they're misleading other people because they're clinging on to relative truths that actually do not exist harmoniously with nature. Look out into the world and see if you can spot any beliefs, any knowledge, any consensus accepted wisdom that is not exactly allowing us to exist harmoniously with nature. And we wonder why these patterns keep repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. These patterns will repeat until we learn the lesson. And the lesson is, how do we exist more harmoniously with nature? How can we be so honest with ourselves that we can understand what in ourselves is actual truth and existing harmoniously with nature, and what in ourselves is a belief, is an assumption, is an impression put upon us by other so-called qualified authorities that might not actually be in total harmony with nature. There are so many people that have so many assumptions. Oh, I had a spiritual experience, therefore I know the all in all. Oh, I read the spiritual book, so I know the all in all. Oh, I got initiated by the spiritual teacher, so I know the all in all. And I don't even like spiritual religious vocabulary because this applies to all people on earth, irrelevant of religion. Oh, I'm a scientist, I went to this school, I know the all in all. Oh, I'm an astrologer, I got these credentials, I know the all in all. We have to actually discern what we actually know versus the assumptions and the impressions that are coming from culture, that's coming from our teachers, that's coming from the consensus accepted belief systems of this society and this day and age. Because it's an actual amazing fact that many of us cannot see beyond this current day and age. Many of us don't look into history. Many of us don't see the patterns that have been repeating for so long. So we just assume that we know the best right now. Oh, I had the recent realization. I discovered the recent invention. I discovered the recent teaching. I know the all in all. Think about how many spiritual people say, I had this spiritual experience, therefore I had this experience. It taught me something, therefore I have the wisdom, I have the qualification. Oh, I've seen God. I know God because I've seen Him, right? Seeing God in truth, in wisdom, would be a constant. It wouldn't be a temporary experience. When we have a temporary experience that teaches us something, and I'm not saying that experiences don't teach us something, and this is how life works. You go through an experience, you forgot to tie your shoes, and you fall on your face on the sidewalk. That's an experience, and we're going to learn from that experience. Does that mean that the all in all is that when I tie my shoes, I'm protected? This is what we all do as a species. We all go through one experience, we all go around the loop-de-loop one time, and we think we know the all in all. This is not reality. Reality is, as soon as you have the spiritual experience, it's done. And if you're a real, honest person, and that means that you are unsatisfied with what you don't actually know in truth, it's just an assumption or a belief or some knowledge that we've taken from places, and maybe we've taken this knowledge and we're trying to assimilate it into true wisdom. We want to test it, we want to experiment, we want to make it so. But we know that it's not concrete yet. This is honesty. This is authenticity. And this is the requirement of the spiritual being, whether or not they know they're a spiritual being, irrelevant of what spiritual practice or religion they have. If you possess this honesty, you are moving in the direction of the truth. You are allowing yourself to evolve in a way where you're not fighting against the grain of life, the way we see so many people doing it now. Oh, I know the all in all, so I'm going to take this sliver of reality, and this is how it is. And think about how we see this reflected in the world at large. Think about nationalism. Think about sectarianism. Religious bigotry. Oh, this is my book, this is the way I dress, this is my culture, this is my nation, and because this is the all in all, I need to make sure that when I travel to other countries and other places, I'm spreading the all in all to them, because they don't know. And then you travel to the other country, they've got their book, their way of dressing, their culture. Oh, we know the all in all. We need to distribute to everybody else. And nobody is listening to the other person because nobody is considering how what we might know might be an impartial truth rather than the whole thing. But if we can be actually satisfied with the fact that we don't know everything, therefore there is room to grow. There's an actual spiritual journey to be had. There's an actual hero's quest to be had. That is noble, that is empowering, that is invigorating, exciting, that takes us through the full spectrum of experience. Isn't that a hell of a lot more satisfying than knowing the all in all and sitting up on the special seat? That way I can depart what I know to everybody else. Tie your shoelaces and you will be protected. It's time for us to start critically thinking about what we know versus what we might know that's, it's helpful at the time, but there's a lot more that we can be getting into. You have one spiritual experience that, we can agree that we have a spiritual experience, or just an experience in general, like the shoelace. You have a tangible, first-hand experience. You're going to learn something. We're going to learn from these experiences. Collectively, as a globe, we are learning from the collective experiences all the time. This is why experiences happen, and this is why experiences are not always fun. We do have to keep our shoes tied if we don't want to trip over each other more than necessary. And when we have a spiritual experience that tells us something about the spiritual truth, that tells us something about the mysterious and the unseen world, well, that can be a truth. That can be something that we're learning about the mysterious and unseen world. But as soon as we say, that's it, I know, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm not moving anymore, you have signed up for first-class bigotry. You have signed up to have life now show you. You don't know everything. If we were just honest with what we actually experience, oh, that was an experience, but it ended. It was a temporary experience, and I learned something from it, but there's a level of uncertainty now. And lo and behold, if we are honest and we are sincere and we know that we don't know everything, we keep getting more and more experiences because we invite the experiences. Yes, I'd like to have more experiences that teaches me more about the universe, rather than, I know everything, I'm qualified, I'm the authority, I'm going to teach everybody about what I know. And then life has to teach us that we don't know everything. And think about when we look into history, when we look at people, when we look at the world, notice these patterns and get to the position of seeing these patterns everywhere. That way we actually have the inherent wisdom. Oh, we're all evolving. None of us actually know everything. I see this pattern reflected everywhere all the time, and I'm open to an experience coming that will break this pattern, that will prove me wrong. But I've been open to this pattern being broken for years and 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 years, and it doesn't really seem to be breaking. That's how you get real wisdom. We are always open to the pattern being broken. Oh, my understanding of God, my understanding of truth, my understanding of my country, my understanding of human history. I think I understand these things, but I am always going to be open to these things changing. That way I can be sure of what is true and not be misled by the distortions that lead us into becoming disharmonious with nature. If we can understand and we can see the patterns everywhere, oh, this is what keeps happening, this is what always happens, well, then we can start to exist harmoniously with nature. Now, don't we think it's a very critical observation and point to make it very clear that since we see so apparently and so visibly at this particular time the devastating amount of disharmony, of suffering, of torture, of ignorance on this planet, shouldn't we assume that maybe we don't know everything yet? Shouldn't we assume that maybe the patterns that we've been relentlessly repeating in the past should be broken, should be changed? And should we maybe pay attention to the fact that since experiences happen for us to learn from them, we shouldn't be seeing the same redundant experiences that keep happening as, oh, we already know everything. Oh yeah, this just keeps happening and we're never able to change it, and it's painful and it's horrible and it's not harmonious because we already know everything. Right. We can have a divine experience that might give us some understanding, but we ought to know that there is more where that came from. And you have one experience of God and you see God and, oh, I see God, I'm self-entitled, I know. Everybody can stop their search because I stopped my search, I'm entitled. Everybody gather around, the search is over. But if we're sincere, if we're honest and we're authentic with what's actually going on in the inside, we will continue to have more and more experiences. We'll have more visions of God. And those visions of God will uproot our previous assumptions. And it really doesn't stop going as far as I know. Because it's never going to stop in my life. I don't want it to stop. Why would you want to be happy with a distraction, with a delusion, with an illusion, or with an impartial truth? Because we're so happy with that tiny little sliver of the cake. Oh, this is it. The search is over, everybody. Tie your shoes. You'll be protected. We have to be understanding that it's going to be a lot of experiences that we go through before we're done. Oh, man. And another thing that we need to understand is that information and wisdom can come to us from more than one source. There's been the assumption that we only know what we know from what comes to us in an authorized textbook. Oh, this is written by God, which chances are it wasn't, but let's just make that assumption, even though very, very apparently if we use our brain for 2 seconds, we know that that is a relative truth. Come on, we need to start agreeing on some things together. It is a relative truth that a book that was written by historical men was written by something that's not a historical man. Similarly, when we get a scientific textbook and, oh, this is the PhD, this guy studied in a prestigious university, therefore he knows the all in all. He's authorized, he's qualified. Qualifications, authorization. We need to make sure that we're not giving ourselves over to somebody who's delusional and thinks they know the all in all, when in fact they're in possession of something, but it's an impartial truth. And one way that we can actually open ourselves up from being deceived in a world where there are infinite deceptions is for us to start tuning into all the various ways that information can come to us and that truth can come to us. Truth does not just come to us through a book. Truth does not just come to us through a teacher. Truth comes from our experiences, our feelings, our intuitions, our gut instinctual sensations, and we collectively, as a consensus, has trained ourselves to believe that these other various sources of information, the other senses that we have to use for our own discernment besides our rational mind, do not allow us to tap into truth. We are so deluded at this particular point in time, and we are existing on such a tiny fragment of the total reality, existing on such an isolated island, that we assume that the one way that we receive our information is the only way. So we turn on the mainstream news and we literally just let that become what we assume is the knowledge of the world. We tune into one book and we assume that this is the knowledge of the universe. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard from religious people that it's very important that you only stick to one religion. Make sure you only read one book and make sure you only follow one branch or one teaching. Because if you start listening to other books and other teachings, you're going to get confused and blah, blah, blah. Think about how ignorant that is to say. You're saying that you have an understanding of God and God is the source of everything, but don't go looking other places for it? We are amazingly early in our evolution, and we should understand that. If we can understand that we are amazingly early in our evolution, we'll have a hell of a lot time not being deluded into making friends with prison and thinking, I know the all in all. Tie your shoes and you'll be protected. We are so amazingly early in our evolution. We must accept and know that we are just beginning to understand the truth. We are just beginning to understand the actual human history of what's actually gone on this planet. We are just beginning to understand the laws of nature, the laws of the universe. We are amazingly early in our evolution. We have become so separate from the harmony inherent in nature that for hundreds and hundreds of years we suppressed women, and even 50 years ago women couldn't even report their own rape. Several decades ago, black people weren't considered to be human beings. And we think that we're so evolved and so advanced at this particular point in time. Look at where we're coming from and where we are as a collective species. And look at how staggeringly amounts the huge percentage of people cannot look beyond where we are now. The mainstream news, America, the Bible, the Quran, whatever it is that's in our immediate environment that shapes these blinders, and then we just accept that this is our reality. Shouldn't we be in a position now of accepting the fact that we collectively as a species have not gotten everything in the bag? Therefore, the best thing that could ever go for us or ever happen to us is our own dissatisfaction with where we've already been. Because we have grabbed onto so many things and believe that that's the best thing for us, that's the all in all, and then we become limited to that thing. To the point where we start tuning out the rest of our senses. We start tuning out our actual wisdom. As we understand true reality, true nature, more and more and more, we will have a much better and easier time living within it. At this apparent time, it should be obvious to us how much work we have left in that regard, because we have a lot to learn in terms of how we actually bring harmony to this planet. And many of us like to use this word love, or this word unconditional love. We have to start seriously looking at and scrutinizing, does our culture bring us harmony and love? Does our religion bring us harmony and love? Do our consensus accepted beliefs bring us harmony and love? Does our scientific understanding bring us harmony and love? Are we actually living to the best capability that human beings have to live, getting rid of all the distracting ideals and fantasies that keeps us from asking these questions? Let's not worry about what we can't see until after we die. Let's not worry about what has no practical application to where we are right now. And let's focus on the staggering amount of disharmony in this world so we can start working on moving in the direction of factually understanding nature in such a way where we can exist lovingly and harmoniously. We have to look at the patterns that are still repeating, that are ancient patterns that have been repeating for a long, long time. And we have to actually consider, is this in alignment with nature? Is this actually creating harmony on this planet? Would it assist us to bring us into greater harmony and alignment with nature? For us to continue to segregate, to prejudice, to push away, to label as lesser than and evil? Or should we start acquiring First, by throwing away the distractions and the misleading notions that are all pervasive in the collective accepted assumptions. In order for us to start tapping into levels of understanding that can lead us into seeing that, oh my goodness, we can do so much better. We can get rid of the notions that are creating disharmony on this planet by understanding a nature that inherently, if we were to understand it, we could live harmoniously with. And shouldn't we start focusing on this inherent underlying nature that is seen everywhere and in all things, instead of harboring ourselves on the island, escaping off to the commune, escaping off to the temple, escaping ourselves off into our little communities, where we only see one thing. Let's start looking deeper. Let's start being real. And if we can do this at this time, this next year might be one of the biggest years of revelation in terms of what is actually true versus the assumptions, the concepts that we've been circulating around and all convincing each other to believe in for thousands and thousands of years that are actually inherently not in harmony with nature and is therefore making all of our existence on this planet miserable. We have to not be satisfied with what we got right now if we want to progress and change in a healthy way. So let us be scrutinizing and actually focusing on discernment. How do I separate my true wisdom from my beliefs, from my knowledge and my assumptions? That way I can be moving in an ever increasingly healthy direction by stepping into willingly more information that I didn't understand before. I want to know what I don't understand now. I'm open to not being completely in possession of the truth. That way I can become actually moving in the direction of it and inevitably acquire it for myself. That way, even if all of the world, everybody in the population is under some spell and believes some nonsense, if I possess real wisdom, I will not even for an instant be deluded or deceived. Let us think about how much of our truth actually comes from that place of wisdom versus how much of this truth simply comes from our family, our surrounding circles, our surrounding environments, all of our associations impresses themselves upon us. Do we actually accept these things as the total truth? Or are these containing some of the elements that we need to start looking at and desiring to change?